And that's, what is the biggest misconception about autism? So Michele, I saw you get excited about that. So do you want to start off on that one?
So one of the misconceptions about with autism, like, it's definitely about with not listening. Like, people think that individuals with autism are not listening just because that they're not showing like eye contact. That is not true whatsoever. Like, I have, with my experiences with my students and stuff, like, they are just as aware as any other person. Just because they're not looking at you, like, they're still listening, they're still attending to what they're doing and while they're working and stuff. So don't force the eye contact, really. Like, don't force it. They're still attending. It's just again, like, going back to what I've been saying, just know the individual. Again, it doesn't matter, like, you don't have to like force it about with eye contact. So they're still attending, you know?
Yeah, and that's a big point of controversy that a lot of people, and I, remember back in the day when, like, and I don't think any AB agency does this anymore, but you would just would be like the big thing, look, and I think nobody really does. And I do think that eye contact can be an important form of communication, but the fact sometimes, like you said, we think kids are ignoring, but they're not ignoring. They're just unable to really turn around and look, because it's just neurologically, that's not how their brain works. And they could even want to, but it just doesn't happen for them. And that doesn't mean they're not listening to you. Sorry, Marianne, go ahead. You wanna ask your question directly? I would love that.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say they might just be attending differently. So
yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. All right, Kevin, you're just like next on my list. So I'm just going from in order of who I see. So Kevin, what is the biggest misconception in your opinion, in your perspective about autism?
I would say I'm glad you asked this question, Marianne, because I think there is one big misconception about autism, is that we lack the ability to empathize with others, people with autism lacking empathy. I would say I consider empathy personally to be one of my bigger strengths, actually, one of my strong areas. So I think there is a big misconception about that. And it's kind of partially a stereotype. And then sometimes I will say, because we tend to struggle a little more with reading some of the nonverbal cues, we might be slower to pick up on when somebody's upset, and we also might be slower to think about the best thing to say to kind of comfort, someone who's close to us who's upset. But it doesn't mean we don't care about how they feel and care about, that they're upset and why they're upset. So I would say, yeah, I think that's a big misconception about autism, that we lack the ability to empathize with others.
Yeah, that is really, really great, Kevin. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I have always said that, but you put it so eloquently in a way I'd never have been able to phrase it. So thank you. That was really powerful. So yeah. So Rachel, you are next on my list. So what is the biggest misconception about autism in your perspective?
That we're all the same, because more often than not, we're portrayed in the media as the same stereotype, that we're like this stupid Rain Man sort of figure that's white, often male, and good at math. And I'm sick of it. I mean, we wouldn't be a spectrum if we didn't have girls, people who are different races, and that's what makes us amazing. I always talk about that, and I just believe that with all my heart.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And actually, we're starting to learn as professionals that there are probably genuinely more boys that are autistic than girls, but the numbers are actually a lot different than what we think, because the way that autism was classically defined and the tests that were classically made to defined to pick up autism based upon the definition was actually designed to recognize autism in boys. But autism manifests differently in boys and girls. So the diagnostic test will not always pick up autism in girls, where it is designed for autism in boys. And a lot of professionals like myself are actually advocating for changing assessments so they're more accurate and they represent more people who are on the spectrum. That way more people get help. A lot of times, and we've had a lot of discussion around this even last week, a lot of girls don't get diagnosed until they're in adulthood. And there's a lot of confusion for them, and they don't wind up getting some of the help that really they could have benefited from. So that's a really great perspective. Thank you. So Aidan, what in your opinion is the biggest misconception about autism?
Yeah, so I'm actually really big on this. I think that the biggest misconception that really people as a whole have for autism is how they perceive certain things. So I don't usually like talking about, things personal about me, and that's something that I need to work on. I really try to keep things close to the chest, but I think that my example will kind of help understand the narrative that I'm trying to explain. So a lot of the times, this I think it might be more severe or more frequent depending on the severity of somebody having autism, but I know that a lot of the times I perceive certain conversations and I feel certain things. So it could be a typical comment that somebody might make, and in my head I'm like, what's the other meaning behind that? And what they're saying something more, and they're saying something that is passive aggressive. They're saying something that is secretly they're trying to say. There's like a hidden meaning in that. And another thing I think I do, and some people, and correct me if I'm wrong to the other panelists if they don't agree with me, another thing that I've kind of seen is sometimes there's that factor of sometimes you're being off base with emotions, and sometimes that is really true. Sometimes it's really hard, I think, for everyone to gauge how people are feeling or how you react in a situation. And sometimes the way people speak to people with autism can be actually very counterproductive, because there's always those wheels going on in the head. What are they actually saying? And then sometimes there can be like a whole explosion, and you, the person that is neurotypical, is like, where did that come from? So in my example, I would sometimes, not always understand certain situations, and I still do to this day, and that's just something that I have. And unfortunately, I had a friend that I was really close with, and I try to be as private as I can be, sometimes to a fault, but this friend knew, about me having autism. This was way before I started the advocacy, and way before I was all about, this was years and years and years ago, when I was like a little kid, almost like 12, 13. And excuse me. And my friend knew about me having autism, and there was a time in which he lied to me about something, and I was asking questions and everything like that, and I was like, hey, not a big deal, is it possible that you did this or whatever? And there came that gaslighting factor where he said, no, and you're just really off base on this. I understand that sometimes it's hard for you. Like, he gave me the runaround and tried to make me think that I was really perceiving things in a weird way. And then I later find out that he was in fact lying. It makes me really crazy sometimes when people will gaslight or will say that you're really off base about this. Sometimes if there's like a reaction that you get from somebody with autism, you might say, a better way of saying that is, okay, why do you think that? Rather than automatically going to that assumption that they're off base or that they're inaccurate, because every once in a while there really is. And it's more often than not that sometimes there's just a miscommunication. You're not always off base and perceiving things. Sometimes it really is. And sometimes having that conversation, rather than being in this, and it really can come off to a lot of kids in a condescending way, rather than kind of saying, well, Aidan, I think you're really off base on this, and I think that you should really think with your eyes and open your mind to the other piece to this. That's the type of rhetoric that is really helpful when, in fact, there is a situation in which a kid is not really on base with something, but to automatically go to that at the get-go and not have a conversation, that can be very damaging. And that's why, in my experience, I found myself and a lot of other kids in public schools or in sometimes general settings have a hard time, because a lot of the times they don't always understand that factor, and they always say, that's not really accurate, or you're incorrect with that. So that's kind of what my takeaway from it is. You're not always off base, and sometimes if you are, then just have a conversation. I would recommend avoid putting yourself in a situation in which you convey to them that you kind of have the superior strength in knowing that, because it's not always true. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And Aidan, just the perspective on that to share, like, even what the catalyst was for me when I started asking autistic adults to come and help me to serve people with autism better, autistic kids better, was I had a lot of autistic adults who were leaving me negative reviews on my Facebook profile. And when I complained to my friends and I said, I'm working so hard to create this content and I'm trying my best to help families. And I was really upset about it. Like, I was hurt because I was doing the best I could. And when I shared this with some of my friends who are professionals and said, like, what do you think is going on? Most of them dismissed it and just said, well, they're autistic. They don't really have social skills. So just ignore it. Like, you should know better. They don't know what they're talking about. And it was just horrible. And I sat with it and I said, like, no, if enough people are saying the same thing, maybe I'm doing something wrong, and maybe the amazing, well-intentioned people who taught me, maybe they were doing their best, but they taught me the wrong thing. And so I was willing to listen.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I feel really bad. No, I want to give everybody a chance to talk. I just really want to jump in on one thing. First, Pat, thank you for commenting about your appreciation for my comments. I really appreciate that. And just another quick thing that I wanted to add. When just kind of talking about having that revelation of kind of, in a situation when you possibly expect or trying to, it's like not incessantly, but kind of checking your temperature and seeing, or sometimes being completely transparent. So saying, what are you actually thinking right now? When you heard the comment that I just said, did you perceive that to be me playing a game or me doing something? Did you find a hidden meaning or something? Being completely, I think in life, not just with autistic kids, but everyone, we all need to be a little bit more transparent. I'm working on that regarding privacy and everything like that. And I also think that we all really need to just stop being afraid of some of the societal expectations and everything. So I just think that with transparency and having that kind of being fed into the relationship you have with this person with autism, that's a really helpful thing, because then they feel heard and they feel that you're not playing tricks and trying to play these games with them.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, Aidan. And just listening, right? And that was like also my big takeaway, is that you have to listen. You can't just assume as a professional or assume as a parent that you're correct and that people don't have valid information to share. And like I said, a lot of very well-intended people have made mistakes. And I own up to those mistakes that I made. And there are certain things and certain ways that I taught that I wouldn't teach today. But all we can do is move forward. And that's what really this is about really just coming together. We didn't have, and 10 years ago, I started 12 years ago, there wasn't a unified autistic community because social media didn't exist and people lived in spread out places and autism wasn't understood. And there weren't a lot of people that had a diagnosis yet. So today there is, and it provides an incredible opportunity for these misconceptions to be cleared up. And that's, I love that question, Marianne, because this is the reason that I started this. And this is the reason that, I started a TV show. It's called Bridge the Gap. It actually plays on several public access television shows. These episodes are also going to be airing on live television as well. So this is my first time letting the panelists know that, but these are actually going to be played on live television. So yeah, and we have to have these conversations. Professionals, no one goes into the world of special education and says, I really want to damage children, so let me dedicate my life to a low-paying job that's really hard and emotionally taxing so I can cause people emotional trauma and social damage. We all go into this wanting to help people, wanting to serve people, wanting to make people's lives better. And, these conversations are how we're going to ultimately be able to do that.
So important.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's so helpful. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So Monica, we have your perspective. What is the number one misconception of autism?
I think the hardest thing for me is the idea that I would be better off if I was neurotypical, or that life would be better if I wasn't autistic. I love that I'm autistic. I love my perspective. Both of my brothers are also likely autistic. We joke around and we're like, it's the tism. We make jokes with each other. I love it. And I don't want to be neurotypical. I don't want to mask my autistic traits and try to be neurotypical. So that's a big one for me. Another one was what Kevin said about empathy. That's another one. And the third thing is I get a lot of people who I'll be like, oh, I'm autistic. And they're like, oh, you don't look autistic. Like, what am I supposed to look like? So that's my thing.
Yeah, I see Michelle rolling her eyes. Yeah, autistic people there's no such look as autistic. So we can just clarify it's not a fashion trend. It's not people say different people look different races, different ethnicities, different heights, different weights, different everything, cultures, different styles. So that's a great one. Thank you, Monica. I always roll my eyes when I hear that too.
And kind of goes with the be better off neurotypical thing, but just to clarify, within that frame is that people think that I am automatically intellectually disabled because I'm autistic, and that's just not true. That's
Monica has edited a lot of my blog posts for me, and she has saved me from a lot of grammar mistakes. So I can tell you firsthand that she is a very intelligent woman. Perfect. But yeah, that's true. And right, and the opposite can be true too. People assume that someone's hyper gifted in math, where maybe not, right? Or or they're going to naturally be super interested in numbers and letters, maybe not, right? Everyone's different, and everyone's perspective is different, and skills and everyone's strengths and weaknesses are different. So, thank you. Jesse, I would love to hear your perspective. And I know this is a question that I know you're passionate about because we've actually talked about this before. Jesse, you are muted.
I got it. I almost forgot. Well, I was saying while on mute that I agree with Kevin's perspective. I think you said that it's a misconception that we lack empathy and we're egocentric. That's absolutely not true. I really try to eliminate that myth through all of my actions that hopefully make the world a better place. But a big misconception, I believe, is that we have flaws. We need to work on things. Quite frankly, some of those flaws could be our biggest chance for survival. And it could be the result of trying to fix a much worse problem that will create bigger havoc. I have to be honest, in 38 years, it has not become easier to avoid saying the wrong things. the only thing that has become easier is putting forth the effort to make it better and control myself. And for me, that unfortunately leads to another problem, such as being told you're too uptight, you try too hard. But I don't know, after 38 years of it not getting easier or finding a middle ground, I don't know if it will get easier. So I think that people with autism need to strengthen their self-advocacy skills and let the public know, that I'm doing the best I can, and this is where I came from. And for the autism population, there's a misconception that we're weird, that we create our own problems, and also that we have to let things go, because quite frankly, if Temple Grandin had let go of that cattle machine, then the cattle squeeze machine, then where would the cattle industry be? If Thomas Edison had stopped after the 900th and 99th time of trying to find the right filaments for the light bulb, then we would be in a different place. I'm sure that at one time someone said to him, you have to know when to stop. And we don't have to learn how to let go. In fact, we can learn how to compromise, put something on a back burner, and back off when necessary. And instead of forcing this population to grind its way into a round hole if we're a square peg, we can widen the round hole and find these little compromises and tweaks to make life a little bit easier and make it possible to thrive in a professional career. And the last misconception is that we're not sociable. And quite frankly, I think that a lot of people in the neurotypical population are not sociable and do not have the right social skills. I do not understand why people think ignoring somebody who's a kind person is the right form of communication.
Yeah, that's really true, right? That's not everybody's nice, and we know that. And I find, and I think that holds true also in the autism community. There's really nice people and there's people that are not really nice, but I found that like you guys are some of the most exceptional and kind and generous and giving people I've met. And absolutely all of you are 100% examples of the fact that people that are autistic, they are empathetic and they do care and they do want to make a difference. And you're doing it the best way you know how, just like I'm doing it the best way I know how. And I've always done it the best way I knew how. And I may not be doing it right? But all I can do is the best I know.
Well, my attitude for your situation, Jessica, is that if you're not offending or soliciting complaints from about 15% of the whole world, then you're not doing something right. If 15% of people are not criticizing you, then it means you're doing nothing, or you're changing for every person and not being a real human being. And I want to say one more thing about my refusal to ignore people as a form of communication. My sister Dina Seals is on the panel, and she can attest to this. When telemarketers call my family's home, I answer on purpose, and I kind of use the analogy of when I was pursuing girls as a teenager. If they refused to answer the first 10 times, I'd say, oh, they must not be home. I'll just keep calling back, which never really ended too well, but it was the best I could do at the time. It seemed like the right thing to do.
Thank you. Yeah, right. That's funny. Thank you for sharing that. So Jeff, I want to ask you also this question, since you are honorary panelist tonight, to share, and then I guess we'll close after that. So what is your perspective? What's the biggest misconception of autism?
Well, I think the biggest misconception of autism is that people assume that people with autism are, wise beyond the years. They think they're perfect. And I think, to be honest, we're just like everybody else. We're no different than you or me or whoever. And we tend to have flaws. We tend to have, we're always a work in progress. There was a song on My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic called Flawless. It was in season 7, and the song was about, we're not flawless. We're a work in progress. We've got dents, we've got quirks, and we have flaws that make us work. So I think that neurotypical people, I think, tend to forget that we're just like that. We're no different than they are. So we as an autism community need to let the rest of the world know that nobody's perfect and we're not flawless. We're a work in progress.
I love that song, by the way.
I'm going to have to go listen to it because I don't know it. But as soon as this ends, I am going to pour myself a glass of wine and listen to that song. So I just want to thank you guys all so much for being on here. I mean, honestly, you guys are the reason I love doing what I do. And it just means so much to me that you guys have helped me become a better professional and helped me to help other professionals understand autism a little better and help parents who are here wondering and wanting to do the best thing for their kids. And, sometimes parents don't know what the best thing is to do. And all you can do as a parent is do your best. So I really hope that these insights and these perspectives, they help you to understand your child better, and they help you to make more informed decisions and feel better about the decisions you're making. So we are going to continue to do this weekly. I am getting great feedback. Parents love it. I have actually other people asking to be on the panels. The panels may change it from week to week, but all the guests are always, of course, welcome to be that are here. They're always welcome back. I love all of them. So we are going to be doing this weekly from now on. So this is going to take place every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So I really hope to continue to see you guys on here. If you register the event, you will get the replays. If you want to see any of the other content I create, you can check out my website, hopeeducationservices.com. All of my blog posts are on there. There's some free ebooks on there. And if you wanted to check out more of the videos, if you wanted to see, I know Jesse and Kevin and a lot of the guests, Michele was on, we all on my TV show, Bridge the Gap. That's like more in detailed interviews with the panelists. You can check that out at getautismanswers.com. So I really hope everyone enjoyed this. If you didn't get your question answered, I really would love to hear it next week. So hopefully you have it next week. Alyssa's rating, she enjoyed hearing all of us speak, and she's a speech therapist. I love the fact that there's other professionals on here. I really think it's important as a community, whether we're ABA people and speech people and OT, and we all work together because we all have the same goal, which is to empower and make people's lives better that are autistic. So awesome. So Marian says her team is here too. Thank you for sending it out to your team. Thank you guys all so much. I really hope that we're growing a community of people who are all achieving the same purpose, unifying the autistic community between parents, professionals, and adults, getting everyone on the same page, something that I think hasn't been the history and I hope is the future. So thank you so much, guys, and I will see you all next week.